Hello, I'm Scott. Welcome to the next video in our little chest modelling series. In this video what we're going to do is we're going to add a lock to the front and some hinges to the back. We're going to use a little bit of extrusion and we're going to add some more edges to mark out what those extrusions are going to be built out of. So before we do any of that though, we're going to want a guide for where we want these extrusions to go. So I've just clicked to add another polycylinder, which is going to appear underneath like this. If I hit W, you can move it back, and it's a bit too big, so scale it down, make it a bit thinner for a hinge, a bit longer, shorten it, and maybe a little less length. Now, we want these to be symmetrical, so if we hit W and we use X, we can move our hinge along. Now these don't need to sit perfectly, so we can have this clipping like this and move it up, because these are just a reference. Leave it around about there. Now, we're going to want another hinge on the other side that's the same distance along and the exact same size, so rather than make another cube and then get the sizes the same, we'll just duplicate the one we have. So it's Control D. Now if we hold X again, we can grid snap again and bring it down like so. Now we have two hinges. Now just to make things easier to see, if you come up to the top of your viewport here, you get this little blue cube with white outlines on it. Now if we click this, it's wireframe on shaded it's called, which highlights the wireframe of the object, or the edges on the object, and still gives us this shaded version where there's shadows on different sides, so we can see what's going on. Now we've got our hinges in, we're going to want a lock on the front, so we'll spawn another cube, we'll drag this out, just get it further out so we can see what we're doing. If we hit R, we'll scale it, so we'll bring it in a bit, and we'll leave this square, press W to move it again, and we're going to want to move this to about the same height as our hinges. So if we hold space down, we get this little radial menu. If we hold left click on Maya, we get different camera views. So if we go left view and let go, it now locks our view to the left of the viewport. So if we drag a little selection box and get our hinges selected, we'll hold X and we'll grid snap these to here, and we'll grid snap our lock to the same height. So now these are snapping based on their center still, because we've not edited the pivot, which means that the center on our hinges and on our lock is all perfectly on the same grid line running through. So if we hold space again, hold left click on Maya and go back to our perspective view and let go, that's our normal camera that we start off in, we can now go back to editing this a bit more. We'll just pull this lock out a little bit more. We'll scale this a little bit, we'll make it a bit bigger. Oops. There we go. That's a bit better. Now we need to make our one box have these elements on it. So the way we do that is we extrude, but first of all we're going to add some edges so that we can mark out where that extrusion is going to be. We're going to go to Mesh Tools at the top, and then we'll click on this and we're going to go down to Insert Edge Loop. So this allows us to click on an edge and drag along while we'll hold left click down, and we can drop new edges onto our mesh. So we can do this along the way like so until we get it all marked out, and same here. Now before we go any further, we're going to want to get these snapped perfectly to the points on our guides. So if we go over to the left here and we just click on the select tool, that'll bring us out of the insert edge loop so we can click freely without adding more edges again. Now if we double click an edge loop, it'll select the whole ring right the way around. So if we hit W now to move it, and we hold V for point snap, and we drag the axis until we can snap it perfectly to the points on our guides, then we're going to have these edges right where our guides are sitting. If we use Alt and drag and move the camera around, and then again V for point snap, and we just snap these like so. Now we're going to need lateral edges as well, so if we go Mesh Tools again, Insert Edge Loop, and we just drag these into place like so. W, hold V, and drag them into place. Now that we've done that, we can hold right click down, we can go to object mode and let go, and we can delete out our guides. So we'll do hold shift and we'll click both our hinges. We'll delete these and then we'll hold right click again when we've got our object selected, and we'll go to face, and we'll select the two faces using shift that were where our hinges sat. Now we can't just pull these out because we get this weird bending, so if we hit Ctrl Z, we're going to extrude them, which is this little pillar here on a white plane. So there, you can either click that button to get into the extrusion, or we can use Ctrl and E, which is a hotkey for extrude. Now it gives us this little menu that pops up, but I find that your best bet is to usually just use the little translate tool to pull these out. And that looks about right, and then we'll do the same on the front. We'll go right click and object mode, and we'll delete out our lock. Now underneath our lock is three faces, just based on where the guiding lines for the hinges were, so we're going to select all three. So we'll click on the mesh, we'll go to face, and we'll do 1, 2, 3, we'll press Ctrl and E, and we'll drag this lock out on the front. We'll just click off. Now if we go back into object mode, our mesh is really starting to build up in poly count now, which is the amount of square faces. So you can track that on the side here in this top corner where we have polygons and tris and edges and verts. So polygons is how many four-sided faces you have, and tris is how many three-sided faces you have. So it says 236 three-sided faces, and that's because of the way game engines read your mesh. So they can only read four-sided or three-sided faces, so a poly or a tri. Anything with more sides than 4 is an n-gon, and the engine doesn't know how to read it. It doesn't know how to divide the faces up. So when you put this mesh into an engine, what will happen is all these four-sided faces, the engine will split them in two and turn them into tris, which is why it's saying we have so many here. If you have a 5-sided face, say, the engine doesn't know where to run that split, because it will run the split and it will still be left with a face with more than 3 sides on it. It'll still have a poly, and it won't know what to do with that poly afterwards. So you'll get these weird issues with your textures or with your shading on your objects. So we want to keep everything in 4-sided faces. What have I done here? I've somehow added additional extrusions on the back. We'll fix that in the next video. Yeah, your polys though, you want to try and keep polys only where necessary. So you don't want heaps of these faces around here, say, that aren't really doing anything more because they were construction lines. So in the next video we'll get rid of a lot of these construction lines, and we'll sort whatever I've done on the back here by double extruding this. And yeah, thank you for your time.